I used to think Tessa was the sister I never had. We met at a family BBQ the summer my husband and I got married. She was the wife of Noah's older brother, loud, charming, always camera-ready, with a curated life that glowed on Instagram. I was quieter, a newly licensed vet who preferred animals over people, who wore the same jeans for days and never got around to painting her nails. Still, she welcomed me instantly, called me Jules, like we'd known each other forever. When I had my first miscarriage, it was Tessa who held me in her arms while I sobbed. She rubbed my back, whispered that I wasn't alone, and brought me soup with handwritten notes that said things like, "You're stronger than this, and some babies are just too beautiful for Earth." I believed her. I trusted her. I thought her presence in my life was a blessing. The second miscarriage happened nearly a year later. Again, she was the first to arrive. She helped me clean out the nursery we'd barely started and offered to host a healing weekend at her lake house. I was raw, hollow, and desperate to feel normal again, so I said yes. We drank wine, we cried together. She asked me if I'd picked a name. I told her quietly, ashamed, like it was a secret I shouldn't say out loud. Luna. Tessa gasped. "It's so beautiful," she said, holding my hand. "You should keep that in your heart forever." That name did stay in my heart, until I heard it again 2 months later, at Tessa's baby shower. She stood beneath a wall of gold balloons and announced her daughter's name to hundreds of fans watching on live stream. "Her name is Luna," she beamed, "because she lit up my darkest nights." My stomach dropped, the room spun, and when I confronted her after, in the kitchen with plates of half-eaten cake and a sink full of wine glasses, she only shrugged. "It's not like you were going to use it." The third miscarriage came like the others, sudden, cruel, without warning. I found the heartbeat at home. Gone. I didn't even cry that time. I just sat in the bathroom and stared at the same spot on the floor for hours. Tessa dropped off a bag of prenatal vitamins the next day, said it was a new organic herbal blend from one of her brand sponsors. I was too numb to question it. I took them every night before bed. 1 week later, I was back in the hospital. Another loss, no explanation. No warning, just silence on the monitor. I started to suspect something wasn't right when Tessa posted her next pregnancy announcement, complete with a name reveal, Seraphine, the same name I'd written in my locked notes app for the third baby. She'd never seen it. No one had. Unless, that night I found the vitamin bottle in the trash and took photos of the label. I didn't recognize half the ingredients. I sent them to a friend who studied pharmacology. She replied within minutes, "Don't take this. Seriously, something's off." I went numb. I sat at the edge of the bed, stared at the ceiling fan turning above me, and realized the truth in the pit of my stomach. She'd done it. She'd been doing it for years, smiling while she stole pieces of me, one child at a time, my babies, my names, my future, and now, maybe, my last chance. I thought about confronting her, calling her out, destroying her in front of her perfect mommy blogger world. But then something in me shifted. I stood up, pulled my laptop close, opened a blank note and typed 3 words. Give her one. If she wanted to steal another name, I'd give her one she'd never forget. Revenge doesn't always start with rage. Sometimes it begins in silence, when the grief has burned everything else away. She thinks I won't fight back. She's wrong. My name is Juliana Ames, 34 years old, veterinary doctor, lover of animals, wildflowers, and things that don't talk back. I live in a small craftsman-style house outside Asheville, North Carolina, surrounded by trees that turn orange and gold in the fall and birds that visit the feeders I refill every Sunday morning. On paper, my life looks quaint, serene even, but if you ask the people who used to know me best, they'd tell you something else. Feel sensitive, too quiet, always taking things the wrong way. They'd tell you I was never quite the same after what happened, but they wouldn't say what. Because no one wants to talk about women who keep losing babies. No one wants to sit beside a woman who cries in grocery store aisles when she sees newborn onesies in her favorite color. Grief makes people uncomfortable. Repeated grief makes them resentful. My husband Daniel was the only one who never flinched. He met me when I was still in school, still whole. He loved my silence, my awkwardness, the way I named stray cats and talked to raccoons like they were neighbors. We were married under oak trees in my grandfather's orchard with string lights and a secondhand piano. We wanted 5 kids. We said that number out loud. 5. We dreamed of naming them after trees and stars. But dreams change, especially when your body becomes a battlefield and your womb a graveyard. I lost our first baby at 16 weeks. No warning, just blood. A nurse said these things happen. The second was 20 weeks. We'd already bought the crib. The third was just shy of 19. All 3 had names, even if we never spoke them aloud. Luna, Isla, Seraphine. Only Daniel knew them, or so I thought. That's what made what Tessa did feel like more than theft. It felt like spiritual desecration, like walking into a cemetery and spray painting your name over someone else's headstone. You see, Tessa was Daniel's sister-in-law, married to Nate, Daniel's older brother. She was the golden one, blonde, bright, brilliant at pretending. She ran a parenting blog called Mama Bloom, where she shared tips on gluten-free lunches and postpartum empowerment. Thousands of women followed her, worshipped her, believed every curated photo and inspirational quote. In real life, Tessa was exhausting, the kind of woman who hosted elaborate gender reveals for people she barely knew, who gifted framed calligraphy prints of baby names to her friends, always with a wink. Manifesting, she'd say. I once thought her over-the-top charm was just eccentricity. I even admired it. But now, I know better. I now see it for what it was, performance, and behind the glitter, a deep need to be envied at all costs. My in-laws adored her. My mother-in-law, Beverly, once told me, Tessa's a real woman's woman. She just gets it. I remember nodding politely, feeling the quiet shame of never being enough. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't want to talk about breast pumps or school zones. I wanted peace. Tessa wanted attention. I was always the one left behind in family photos, always the one whose plate was passed over at baby showers with glances of pity or worse, thinly veiled irritation. Jules, Tessa said once, you should try IVF, or surrogacy, or yoga, or not being so sad. I smiled at her. I always smiled. That's how women like me survive. We smile while bleeding. We cook casseroles for the women who stole our names. We clap at baby showers thrown in honor of our grief, repackaged. I used to think she didn't know, that she didn't understand, but then I found the old group text, long buried in my phone, between Tessa, my sister-in-law May, and our cousin Hannah. It was from a year ago, after my second miscarriage. Tessa had written, should I feel bad for using Luna? I mean, it's not like she'd trademarked it. They all laughed, sent emojis. May replied, you're the one bringing babies into the world. That name deserves a live one. I stared at that thread until the screen blurred. I never told Daniel. I couldn't, because if I told him, I'd have to admit that his family, the ones who called me their sister, had laughed while I buried my child. Instead, I withdrew. I pulled further into myself. I bought a new phone, deleted old contacts, focused on work, took on more animal rescues, spent weekends bottle-feeding abandoned kittens and nursed dying deer in my laundry room. Animals I found never lied, never stole, never smiled while gutting you. But grief has a way of circling back. And when Seraphine was taken, when the name I'd never said aloud somehow ended up as Tessa's next daughter, I broke. Not loudly, not publicly. I didn't throw dishes or call her out online. I didn't scream in the family group chat. I simply went quiet. I waited. I watched. I counted how many vitamins were left in the bottle Tessa had given me. Noticed how they'd been tampered with. Noticed how no one else seemed to care. That was the day I decided if Tessa wanted another name, I'd give her one. One I created just for her. One so rare, so dripping in myth and meaning, she wouldn't be able to resist, and I would watch her take it, brand her entire identity with it, just like she had with mine. But this time, I'd be ready. This time, I'd leave her nothing but ruin, because this time, I wasn't just grieving. I was building something stronger, something more sacred than vengeance. I didn't plan it all at once. Grief never gives you clarity. It just wraps around you like fog, thick and patient, until one day you start recognizing shapes again. Mine came in the form of a name, Not one from any list I'd written during those hopeful years, not one attached to an ultrasound or a dream. This name didn't come from love. It came from rage, from ashes. Seraphel. I created it from nothing. It sounded delicate, almost angelic, but not soft. It sounded like it could cut. I told no one at first, not even Eli, but I started planting it where I knew my sister-in-law would find it. A browser tab left open on my tablet, a casual mention to my cousin while we baked cookies, loud enough for Cynthia to overhear. A Pinterest board filled with muted golds, antique lace, old calligraphy pages with the name Seraphel Evangeline carefully written again and again. Cynthia took the bait as easily as I knew she would. It started with her Instagram story. Thinking about girl names, saw something magical today. Anyone ever heard of Seraphel? Within a week, she was posting mood boards of her future nursery with Seraphel dreams and divine feminine inspiration. I didn't even have to push, she ran with it. Her content got more engagement than it had in months. People thought she was creative, spiritual, sensitive. I watched it all silently. I didn't even need to lie. She was building the fantasy herself, brick by stolen brick. Eli didn't know yet that I was pregnant, again. I hadn't told him because I couldn't say the words without choking on fear. But every day, I held my breath and waited. 10 weeks, 13, 19. My body held, the baby kicked. I started to believe. At 24 weeks, I told him. He cried. I didn't. My tears were used up, but something inside me unclenched that night. He wanted to tell the family, but I asked him to wait. Just a little longer. I wanted to be sure. At 29 weeks, Cynthia threw her baby shower. Her fourth pregnancy, another daughter, the one we're naming Seraphel, she announced in her invitation, as if it were her birthright. I RSVP'd. I wore a long black dress that draped over my growing belly like armor. No one noticed at first. They were too busy taking selfies with the dessert cart and posting boomerangs of Cynthia opening gifts. The theme was celestial beginnings. She'd hired a violinist to play ambient music. Every cupcake had a moon phase piped in gold frosting. Midway through the event, Cynthia stood in front of a pale lilac backdrop covered in faux stars and began reading a speech. This name is more than just pretty. It's powerful. It came to me in a dream. I stepped forward. That's strange, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, because it came to me in grief. Silence fell. I rested one hand on my stomach. 29 weeks, I said quietly. We were waiting to tell anyone. We've lost so much. Cynthia blinked at me, confused. But, she started. I turned to her. I invented that name, Cynthia. I created it. I left it where you'd find it. I gave it a story and a shine because I knew you'd take it like you've taken everything else. You can't own a name, she hissed, her voice suddenly sharp. It's just a name. No, I said. It was a prayer, one I whispered every night when I didn't think I'd ever hold a child again. And you made it content. The room was frozen. Cynthia's husband looked between us, clearly stunned. Her mother-in-law stood up and asked if everything was okay. I didn't wait for the answer. I turned and left, Eli at my side, his jaw clenched. That night, she deleted every post with the name. The next morning, her blog header was changed to "Unnamed Blessing Coming Soon." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something heavier, a quiet kind of peace. It wasn't over. I knew that. Cynthia never let go of anything quietly, but the first crack had formed in her porcelain world, and I had more than a name. I had a child growing inside me, one she couldn't touch. At 33 weeks, I began to sleep with one eye open. It wasn't paranoia, it was history, Cynthia's history. When she learned we were adopting 2 years ago, she started asking Eli if we were mentally ready for kids. When I miscarried the second time, she mailed me a book on spiritual blockages in the womb. And now that I was visibly pregnant, visibly stable, visibly happy, I knew she wouldn't just sit back. It started small. Anonymous DMs to my social media accounts. Did your husband know what you did? How do you live with yourself? Most of them used the same phrasing, too consistent to be coincidence. Then one night, our trash was overturned. Nothing stolen, just opened, scattered. My prenatal vitamin bottles were missing, I told Eli. He called the police, but there wasn't much they could do. Nothing criminal here, the officer said, shrugging. Could have been raccoons. I changed all the locks, we installed cameras. I carried a small leather notebook with me everywhere, logging every interaction. On paper, it looked like nothing, but in my gut, it felt like everything. 3 days before my due date, we received a letter from our adoption agency. Due to multiple reports questioning your mental fitness and stability, we are temporarily pausing the process. I sat there holding the envelope, my fingers trembling. We hadn't told anyone we were trying again, not even family. But Cynthia always found a way. That night, Eli's mother called him in tears. "What's going on with you two? Cynthia says you're having delusions again." Delusions. Again, a word loaded with implication, a word that erases your voice, a word used to silence women. I didn't cry. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. It was time. I compiled everything, screenshots, message headers, social media posts, timestamps from our security system. I printed everything and created a chronological file. When Eli saw the pile growing, he didn't ask, he just began organizing with me. He created a folder labeled intentional defamation, another labeled medication tampering. I didn't know what we were building, a case, a defense, a cry for help. All I knew was I had to be ready. I didn't want to just survive, Cynthia. I wanted to be undeniable. At 38 weeks and 4 days, I gave birth to a daughter. We named her Esme. I didn't post about it. No photos, no birth announcement, just quiet joy, just us. Cynthia found out anyway. 2 days later, she sent an email. Not to me. To Eli. The subject line, "She'll ruin you." Inside, a long rambling message about me being a manipulator, about Esme being a trap, about his role in protecting the family. She attached screenshots of my old posts, twisted captions, cropped images. She wrote as if she were concerned, but every line bled with venom. "I just don't want to lose you too." As if Eli were hers. As if I had stolen him. As if everything I'd suffered was merely a reaction to her loss. Not the other way around. That was her favorite story, that she was the victim, that I was the threat. And now she was building a new version of it. Eli looked at the message in silence. Then he wrote back one line, "Don't ever contact me again." That night, I held Esme while she slept, her small chest rising and falling against mine. I looked down at her and knew I wouldn't run anymore. I was done playing small. 2 weeks later, we were invited to Eli's grandmother's 90th birthday. Neutral ground, a restaurant downtown. Cynthia would be there. Of course she would. She never missed a spotlight. At first I wasn't going to go, but then I saw Esme staring at herself in the mirror, giggling, clutching her feet, and I thought, no, I won't let that woman erase this child before she can even walk. We went. Eli carried Esme in her sling, wrapped tight to his chest. I wore black again, not to hide, but to remember. Every time Cynthia looked at me, I remembered. Every time she smiled, I remembered. During dinner, she stood up and clinked her glass. "Before dessert, I'd like to share something." She gestured to the oversized pink envelope in front of her. "This is the name I've chosen for my daughter. It's from our family history, something sacred I found in an old journal." She opened the envelope and held up a printout of a name. Eleonora Grace. "It means hope through honor," she said, smiling. "It's also a tribute to Ellie, who's always been my anchor." The table applauded. I stood. "That's interesting," I said, my voice calm. "Because Eleonora isn't from any family journal. I made it up a year ago for a story I wrote. I shared it only once, privately, with Ellie." Cynthia froze. "That's not true," she said quickly. "It's from great-grandmother's middle name." Ellie pulled out his phone. "Funny," he said, "because here's a screenshot from the original draft Emma emailed me, March 14th, 2023. It even includes the meaning, hope through honor, a phrase she invented based on Latin roots." He turned the screen so everyone could see. "I don't know what Cynthia's talking about, but this name didn't come from her." The room was silent. My mother-in-law looked between us. "Cynthia, is this true? I must have seen it somewhere," she stammered. "You didn't mean to take her story?" I asked quietly. You didn't mean to weaponize her words? Cynthia's face twisted. I didn't steal anything, she snapped. She just can't handle the fact that I'm capable of creating something beautiful too. You've never created anything, I said. You just take. Then you rewrite the story so you're the one bleeding. Cynthia shoved her chair back. This is a witch hunt, she hissed. You all want to crucify me because you're jealous? No, Eli said, holding Esme a little tighter. We're just done letting you poison everything. For the first time, she looked around and saw it. The silence, the looks, the absence of applause. She grabbed her purse and stormed out. The door shut behind her like a period. After that night, silence followed, but not peace. Cynthia's tantrum may have ended the dinner, but her performance was far from over. 3 days later, a blog post went up on her parenting site, What to Do When Toxic Women Threaten Your Family. It didn't name me, of course, but it didn't have to. The description, passive-aggressive, infertile, jealous, manipulative, was so specific, even distant cousins texted to ask if she was talking about me. Within hours, my inbox filled with hateful messages from her followers. One wrote, Your baby will grow up to hate you just like everyone else. I read that while feeding Esme at 2 a.m. I didn't cry. I printed it. I began printing everything, every comment, every anonymous message, every subtle dig she posted with a wink to her audience, and still, I said nothing publicly. My husband kept reminding me, she's trying to provoke you, she needs a reaction to stay relevant. Don't give it to her. So I didn't, but I documented. I built a wall of truth, one screenshot at a time. Cynthia's next move came fast. She filed a formal report to our adoption agency alleging I had untreated mental illness and had once thrown objects at her while holding Esme. The agency launched an immediate investigation. A social worker arrived at our home 2 days later. She was kind but cautious, flipping through her folder. We're required to take all complaints seriously, she said. I nodded. Please, ask anything, talk to anyone. We have nothing to hide. I handed her a binder. It was thick, categorized, labeled documentation of online harassment, medical records, screenshots of all messages Cynthia sent or inspired. We've also installed cameras in every common space. She took it, slightly stunned. No one usually comes this prepared. She's done this before, I said simply. That seemed to change something in her expression. For the next week, I felt watched, not just by the agency, but by Cynthia's followers. One of them parked across our street for hours pretending to look at her phone. Another left note on our mailbox, Jealousy isn't maternal. The tension pressed on us like humidity. I barely slept. LA took time off work. We began to plan for worst-case scenarios. One evening, Esme's baby monitor buzzed. Static, then a click, then silence. I ran upstairs, heart pounding. She was fine. Fast asleep, but her window was unlocked. I knew I had locked it that morning. We checked the camera feeds. At 3:04 p.m., someone passed through our side yard wearing a hoodie. Face turned from the camera. The motion detector triggered, then cut off. Nothing stolen, just passed through. I added it to the binder. I added everything. That weekend, we decided to visit Eli's brother, Mark. He lived 2 towns over and had always kept his distance from family drama, maybe too much distance. When we arrived, he looked pale, tired, guilty. He sat us down. Cynthia's been using my address to send things. What things? I asked. He handed me a small package, unopened. The return address was fake. Inside were photos of me from years ago, before therapy, before Eli, captioned with words like unstable and erratic. One had been edited to show Esme crying, even though she wasn't in the original photo. I'm sorry, Mark whispered. I didn't know what to do. She said if I told you, she'd ruin my reputation too. I looked at Eli. We need to call our lawyer now. We did more than that. We filed a cease and desist letter. We sent a formal harassment report to her hosting provider. We contacted the adoption agency's legal counsel and submitted every documented piece of proof. And still, Cynthia pushed. She created fake Instagram accounts pretending to be me. One posted a rant claiming I regretted having Esme. Another shared a photo of a random infant with the caption, "Still not enough to make me feel whole." The rage I felt was surgical, cold, controlled. I didn't scream, I filed reports. I didn't beg, I built timelines. Meanwhile, the adoption agency sent us an email. "Pending formal review, your status has been reinstated." It was a small victory, but it felt like a fortress. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. One morning, I received a message from someone named Tessa J. It read, "You don't know me, but I used to work with Cynthia. I have something you need to see." I clicked the link, a private Dropbox folder. Inside, PDFs of chat transcripts, emails, photos, all from Cynthia's work account at her old job as a marketing coordinator. She had used her corporate email to coordinate harassment campaigns against 3 other women in her life: an ex-friend, a cousin, and me. She referred to us as the unhinged triplets and kept folders for each. Mine was labeled containment. Inside, a spreadsheet labeled leverage, names, dates, weaknesses, medical notes, even a copy of my therapy invoice from 3 years ago. I stared at the screen until my hands went numb. I called the lawyer. I sent the entire file. We subpoenaed the company for confirmation. They cooperated. Cynthia had left the company 8 months prior, but the digital trail was undeniable. It was enough to take civil action. Our lawyer drafted a restraining order. The police took a formal statement. But something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about Esme, or adoption, or names. It was about reclaiming the truth of my own story. So I wrote it, quietly, carefully, anonymously. I submitted the essay to a parenting journal. They published it within a week. Title, "When Grief is Used Against You." No names, no photos, just the story of a woman who lost children, only to have their memory exploited. The piece went viral, tens of thousands of shares, hundreds of emails from women who had lived something similar. I didn't respond to all of them, but I read every one. And slowly, Cynthia's blog began to lose followers, not because I exposed her, but because the truth began to outshine her performance. That was the most satisfying part. I didn't destroy her, I just stopped hiding. One night, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a single page from a baby book. Esme's name, scrawled in Sharpie, crossed out in red. I handed it to Eli. We didn't speak, we just stared at it. Then he walked to the fireplace, lit a match, and watched it burn. "She's losing," he said quietly. "That's why she's desperate." But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was building something real, strong, documented, unshakable. And I wasn't alone. It started quietly, like all storms do. Our lawyer compiled everything. Every screenshot, chat log, altered image, forged message, blog post, anonymous comment, and fake profile. The binder was 4 inches thick. The timeline, meticulously constructed. Our voices had been ignored before, but now they were backed by evidence. Hard evidence, tangible, undeniable. Cynthia's followers were already beginning to peel away, confused by her sudden change in tone online, her disappearing posts, and the inconsistencies stacking up like rotting bricks. But we didn't engage, not once. Our silence was strategic. The cease and desist letter was served first, then the restraining order. But what changed everything was the moment the police showed up at her door with a warrant. We weren't even notified in advance. They'd quietly launched their own investigation based on the forged adoption documents and medical records. Cynthia had used a fake therapist's letter, signed and notarized, to try and influence our adoption status. That crossed a legal line. The DA called it systematic identity manipulation and interference with a legal process. That's what triggered the raid. According to the report, her laptop was open when they entered. An email draft sat on the screen. Subject, unstable. Women shouldn't be mothers. It was being sent to 3 different adoption forums. The police also found a second phone burner prepaid, filled with fake accounts, some in my name, some impersonating the adoption agency itself. Her browser history included searches like how to simulate mental illness in medical records and states with weakest cyberbullying laws. The prosecutor's face during the first hearing was stone cold. Cynthia had tried to dress the part of the misunderstood mother. Soft beige sweater, hair pulled back in a bun. She smiled sweetly, but the screen behind her showed her posts, in her words, in her tone, laced with venom. "Consider it a favor. You were never meant to be a mother." The courtroom froze when that line appeared. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Cynthia, did you write this?" Her voice barely cracked. "I was venting. It was taken out of context." "Were these accounts created by you?" "No, We have IP matches, email verifications, payment records for advertising boosts." Silence. My husband sat beside me, hand clenched. Not in fear, in resolve. He was done pretending his sister could be saved. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I simply read from my own notes. I described the names she'd stolen, the way she poisoned our fertility treatments with doubt, with jokes, with cruelty masked as jokes. I described the baby name thefts not as isolated incidents, but as weaponized grief. She didn't just name her children after my miscarried ones. She taunted me with it. Photos of Charlotte's nursery were sent the week I lost my second pregnancy. She tagged me in them, used emojis. "Hope this one stays." I told the court about the adoption interference, the faked breakdown posts, the anonymous calls, the social media mobs she orchestrated. I told them how I found a piece of red thread from her sweater in Esme's crib 2 days after she visited. The prosecutor didn't need theatrics. He had the digital trail. He showed it all. The fake therapist letter, the altered documents, the fake screenshots, even the baby photos she had edited to make me look neglectful. My favorite photo of Esme smiling at the camera in her onesie was shown on the screen next to the forged version. In the fake, Esme was crying, her eyes red, her onesie dirty, a filter added shadows under her eyes, and this was submitted to the agency by Ms. Cynthia, the prosecutor stated, as evidence of parental neglect. The courtroom gasped. The judge's pen tapped. "Do you understand the gravity of what you've done, Ms. Cynthia?" She didn't answer. The gallery was packed. Reporters were there, family members, strangers who'd followed the blog saga. When her turn to testify came, Cynthia's voice cracked with rehearsed fragility. "I was trying to protect my family," she said. "I didn't want Esme to grow up in a home where her mother..." She didn't finish. "Where her mother what?" the prosecutor asked. Cynthia's lip trembled. "Where her mother replaced grief with obsession." "Is that what this was to you? Obsession?" "She stole my brother," Cynthia snapped, dropping the mask. "He was mine. I raised him. And then she shows up with her therapy and her journals and her fertility drama, and suddenly he's loyal to her." Her voice had risen. The courtroom was still. "So you fabricated mental illness diagnoses?" the prosecutor asked. "That was a joke." "You submitted them to a federal adoption board." Cynthia blinked. "I didn't think they'd take it seriously." She had confessed. Out loud, in public, on record. That evening, news stories ran nationwide. Mommy blogger accused of sabotaging sister-in-law's adoption. Digital abuse, gaslighting, and baby name theft. A modern family horror story. Revenge as family weaponry. Cynthia's blog was deplatformed. Her sponsors withdrew, and her loyal followers, many turned on her. Some wrote apology letters. Others deleted years of comments. But the damage had already been done. To them, to me, to Esme. The sentencing hearing came 2 weeks later. The prosecutor asked for a suspended sentence with mandatory psychiatric evaluation and a lifetime ban from contacting us or Esme. Our lawyer agreed. Cynthia's attorney asked for leniency. "She's unwell," he said. "She needs healing, not prison." The judge stared at her for a long moment. "You mistook attention for identity," he said slowly. "And in doing so, you shattered your own reflection. You didn't just hurt your sister-in-law, you tried to erase her." He granted the request for a full, no-contact order, lifetime, digital and physical. Cynthia could not email us, message us, speak our names. She couldn't post about us, refer to us, use our names in any publication, online or otherwise. The order extended to Esme and to any future child I adopted or bore. She would never touch us again. Cynthia wept then, not out of remorse, out of finality. Her playground was closed, her audience gone, her narrative revoked. But I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I simply placed my hand on Eli's. We left the courtroom with heads high, not in victory, in survival. A week later, I got a call from the parenting journal that had published my anonymous piece. We'd like to do a follow-up, an interview on reclaiming your name. I declined, not because I wasn't proud, but because this wasn't about a headline or a soundbite. It was about my daughter, my life, my breath, quiet, steady, unshakable. That night, as I tucked Esme into bed, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mama, tell me a story." So I told her one, about a brave little girl who grew up surrounded by shadows, but never let them steal her light. A girl who built a life out of ashes, who never raised her voice, but still made the world listen. "Is that me?" she whispered. "It's all of us," I said, the ones they tried to erase. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, everything was calm. They say time heals. I used to believe that meant forgetting, but healing doesn't erase anything. It builds something new around what broke, stronger, wiser, more patient. The noise faded after the hearing, the messages stopped. The blog vanished. Cynthia became a ghost in our lives, her name only whispered occasionally by distant relatives still processing what had happened. But even then, no one defended her anymore, not even her mother. Esme started kindergarten that fall. I packed her lunch the night before, labeling every little container with her name, the real name, the name she was meant to have. When I dropped her off that morning, she ran ahead of me, her backpack bouncing, waving to the other kids. She turned back once to wave. "Bye, Mama," she called. That one word, Mama, still caught me in the chest. I had waited years for it, fought for it, bleeded for it, lost it, and somehow, in the end, I got to hold it. Eli squeezed my hand as we stood outside the school gates. We didn't need to say anything. Everything we'd survived had led to this moment. Ordinary, beautiful, so normal it felt surreal. That evening, as I was brushing Esme's hair, she asked if she could invite her cousins over for a tea party. "We'll have cupcakes, and I'll wear my sparkly dress." I nodded. "I'll call Aunt Lily." Lily, Ellie's cousin, had been one of the few family members who stayed beside us through it all. She had children close to Esme's age. Her support never wavered. A week later, the living room was filled with laughter. Kids in fairy wings, plastic teacups spilling apple juice. Eli took photos. I sat on the couch watching it unfold like a dream I was finally awake in. One of the other moms pulled me aside. "I heard what happened. I just want you to know, you're the strongest woman I've ever met." I smiled, soft and quiet. "I'm just a mom," I said. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. I had become more than a mother. I had become a fortress, a flame that didn't burn but warmed, a name no one could steal. Every so often I'd receive a letter. Always unsigned, no return address, handwritten in a sharp, slanted script. Sometimes they were apologies, sometimes threats. I never opened them, just handed them to our attorney. After the third one, I stopped even reading the first line. The past was a locked room now. I had no reason to re-enter it. The adoption agency reached out in the spring. "We're doing a series on resilience. Would you share your story anonymously?" I paused. Then I said yes, not for Cynthia, not for vengeance, but for the other women like me who had lost and kept losing, who were told to let it go, to not make a scene, who were gaslit by people they trusted, who were told they were too emotional while their grief was turned into someone else's narrative. I told the agency everything. The stolen names, the campaign to make me seem unstable, the years of doubt. But I ended the piece not with revenge, with the photo of Esme asleep on my chest. Her hand curled over my heart, the caption, "She is my proof that healing is possible, that love outlasts cruelty, that peace, quietly claimed, is the strongest form of justice." The story went viral, quietly, on the forums and support groups where women like me whispered to each other in digital corners. One woman messaged anonymously, "I thought I was crazy, but I see now I was being erased. Thank you for speaking." Another, "My sister did the same to me. I never thought anyone would believe me." A third, "You reminded me that it's not weak to forgive yourself for surviving." And slowly, that became my life's work. I started volunteering with advocacy groups, helping women document emotional abuse, teaching them how to gather digital evidence, how to speak even when their voices trembled. I never used Cynthia's name, not once. She didn't deserve to be the headline. My life wasn't about her anymore. It never really had been. It was always about Esme, about reclaiming motherhood on my own terms, about refusing to be erased. One night, years later, Esme crawled into bed beside me after a nightmare. "You're safe," I whispered, brushing her hair back. "You're home." She looked up. "Were you ever scared, Mama?" I paused. "Yes, I was scared a lot, but I was never alone." "Because of Daddy?" she asked. "Because of you," I said. "Even before you were born, you were with me. You gave me a reason to keep going." She fell asleep with her head on my chest, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, letting that moment soak through the years of grief, of rage, of loss, letting it replace the echo of every cruel word, every mocking laugh, every stolen name. A few months later, Eli surprised me with a framed print for our anniversary. It was a photo he'd taken on the courthouse steps the day we finalized the adoption. In it, I was holding Esme. She was looking at the camera, but I wasn't. I was looking at her. "Because that's the moment everything changed," he said. "You stopped looking at the world for answers, you started looking at her." He hung it in the hallway, next to the first ultrasound we were ever brave enough to keep. The one we never showed anyone. The one from the pregnancy we lost after Cynthia's tampering. A silent child, a quiet name, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. That photo stays there, so that every time I pass, I remember what was taken and what I reclaimed. Not through rage, not through screaming, but through truth, through quiet love, through naming my child and raising her free. They say revenge is sweet, but this isn't revenge. It's restoration. It's peace. It's life.